All right, here we are in sportsBIT Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy, weekend preview edition. Big game breakdown coming up. Look at this, Carolina and Duke, round 3. We'll also hit on Iowa State and TCU. Play of the day before we get out of here. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Cinderella slippers did not fit yesterday. Teams that won as dogs Wednesday went 0-8 straight up and 3-5 ATS Thursday, Teddy.
Yeah, so much for the momentum factor. But the underdogs, there was no carryover. Over straight up. Nobody survived and advanced. But against the spread, we're not talking about a disaster, 3-5 against the number. But yeah, the Cinderella slippers, not much on Thursday, but the weekend has only just begun. We'll see some Cinderella slippers over the next couple of days.
Let's get to it. Some horrific beats. How about Fordham +7 against George Mason? They lose by 11 in overtime. Here's another melt like Duquesne. They led by 7 with 40 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you're going to blow a lead like that with 40 seconds, and you know the story, you're missing free throws. And when you're missing free throws and the other team starts hitting threes, and all of a sudden you start to pucker up a little bit, rough beat for Fordham backers, obviously. But then again, George Mason won the rebounding battle 52-22 in that game. Nonetheless, yeah, you're up 7 with 40 seconds left in your dog and you don't cash. Brutal.
This one was tough, too. Florida State bet up from 6.5 to 8. Bad beat here, sorry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Seminoles are up, 15 with 4 to play. What a situation where they're not even going to foul at the end of the game. But Florida State didn't score again until it was a 5-point game with less than a minute to play. And they got back up by 9, but the final Hokies 3-point attempt whistled for a free throw. Justin Robinson, 3 of 3 from the charity stripe. And then Florida State turned it over before Virginia Tech could foul again. Seminoles win by 6. They got bet up from 6.5 to 8. Tough beat for Florida State.
A lot of bad bets and a lot of bad for the books. Bad bets. Bettors did not want to believe the Cyclones could pull off a 3-0 sweep against Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State was bet up from Pick'em to 1.5. Cyclones by 9.
Yeah, and Iowa State, I mean, they had their number. Iowa State's had everyone number. This team has been a monster in the Big 12 tournament. We'll talk about them again later in the show.
And bad for the books, Villanova bet up to 16 against St. John's. They drop 106 on the Johnnies and run them out. And we told you that the Wildcats want to win this thing earlier in the week.
Sure, Pauly, and this just one of many bad results for the house on Thursday. You're not even going to believe how many games we're going to talk about where the sharp money was spot on and the books took a beating. Villanova from 14 to 16, just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, Michigan State bet up from 5 to 6.5. No problems with Penn State.
No, they blew them out of the water. That game was over 5 minutes in. Penn State, another team whose sphincter tightened a lot down the stretch against Nebraska, had no chance. And watch Sparty. We can expect more Spartans money on Friday. A game we'll preview later on in the show. But I'm shocked that line came as low as it did, and I'm not surprised at all that the bettors took advantage. That was a weak number, and Michigan State made books pay.
This one surprised me. Indiana money against Iowa. Many thought if Iowa won, they were in. They bet Indiana up to 2.5, and Indiana wins in a rout.
Oh, they sure did. I mean, that game was tied at 48-all, and then all of a sudden, it was Blackman hitting threes, and Green hitting threes, and Newkirk hitting threes. It was like a 30-11 blitz. Iowa coach Fran McCaffrey, quote, a lot of different people were making threes. You got to give them credit. They were moving the ball. They played in and out. They shared it. That's been a problem for Indiana all year. Was not a problem in that blowout win, which was another bad result for the house.
Seton Hall does it again. So far, so good. Big East tournament. Bet down from 3 plus 3 to 1.5, and they beat Marquette.
Yeah, I mean, Marquette's a one-trick pony. They're hitting threes, they're going to beat you. They're not hitting threes, it's not as easy. But all of a sudden, the Pirates are making a little bit of a move, just like they did last year, right around the same time. Yes,
and thanks for the viewers turning us on to this. But UTEP does it again. Their streak continues. They were 1-point underdogs against Rice. They led by 20 at the half. They won by 10. 14 in a row ATS for UTEP. Next up, Middle Tennessee State in the semis.
Yeah, sure. Middle Tennessee State's no joke. But 14 in a row against the spread. You're not going to find a Kentucky doing that. You're not going to find the teams that you see on TV all the time doing that. The teams you're going to see cash 14 tickets in a row are teams like UTEP. Teams that nobody's, in terms of the mainstream, not paying a whole lot of attention to, get through it under the radar. They've only been favored 5 times in that 14-game span, cashing a bunch of tickets as underdogs. But yeah, they made money. They took a lot of money yesterday. Bet from +3 to +1.5. Sixth outright underdog win in that 14-game span.
We told you there was a lot. Bet for the books continues. North Carolina bet up to 9. They blow out Miami. And Northwestern bet up from 7 to 9. How about a 31-0 run in the first half against Rutgers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we talked about the rough run that Wyoming had against Air Force on Wednesday. The run that Rutgers has was even worse. When you get outscored 31-0, and they were up 9-6 when the run started. When the run ended, they were down by 28 points, and the rest of the game was garbage time. All 4 Big Ten games, the favorite won by 20 or more points. Blowout city. And look at the ESPN stats and infographic there. The run started at 17:09 in the first half, ended at 5:54. Rutgers 0 of 14 with 7 turnovers during that span. Northwestern 13 of 18 during that span, hence the 31-0 run.
Oregon bet up to 17 against Arizona State. Blowout city, they won by 23. Notre Dame, they took money. I was surprised at that line. Getting 5 against Virginia, bet down to 3.5. Never had any issues there. Virginia again struggled to score. And how about the point spread drama in that Texas game, Teddy?
Oh my God, that was fingernails on a chalkboard. Didn't matter which side you had. All right, Texas is bet from +11.5 down to +10.5. They ended up losing the game by 10. But it's 61-51 with 4.5 minutes left. And they trade empty possessions over and over. It's still 61-51 with 40 seconds left. And then Texas gets whistled for the foul. West Virginia hits them both. Now the Mountaineers are up 12. You're a Longhorns backer. You're like, I can't believe I'm losing this game. One last chance for the Longhorns. Oh, they get fouled on a 3. And then he missed the first, but he hit the next 2. To only lose by 10. Now that, Pauly, is point spread drama. The type of game that if you didn't have action on it, it was brutal to watch. No interest in the last 4 minutes. It's a done deal. Texas is going to lose. If you have action on that game, you don't take your eyes off the TV for a second. That's what they talk about when they say bettors are extra retention when it comes to these games. We watch because it's exciting.
Let's close out the segment with this. I don't know how many times it happens, but what a mess for the sports books. In the MEAC, we had a wrong final score posted.
Yeah, this really is a bizarre story. All right, so ESPN reports the final score of 74-67 in this MEAC game with North Carolina A&T versus Maryland Eastern Shore. Oh, A&T, I'm sorry. Yeah, AT&T, yeah, that's a phone company. Thank you. North Carolina A&T and Maryland Eastern Shore. So, and we're not talking about a game that's getting a ton of action, but Don Best, who supplies odds and information for bettors in Sportsbook, set out 3 separate final scores. First it was 75-65, then 74-67. We're going back to the ESPN score, and then back to 75-65. Of course, the game was lined 7.5, 8, 8.5, so we're talking about one team winning versus the other team. What does Don Best do? Craig Mucklow went through the CEO, went through the entire play-by-play data, found 2 scoring mistakes that were on the ESPN feed and not on the real screen. His quote, "Because we reviewed the video, we went with the score we believe is correct, 75-65. We're an information provider, so we try to provide the most accurate information." So, CG took a handful of small bets on the game. He said 12 or 13 small bets. Westgate actually paid out on the underdog North Carolina A&T, the $1,500 wagered on that side based on the 74-67 version of that final score. Doesn't happen a lot, Pauly. When it does, it creates drama for the sports books, and this is one where legitimately the wrong side got paid at the Westgate here in Vegas.
Yeah, wild one there. Incredible story. Up next, big game breakdown. How about UNC Duke round 3 on sportsBIT? Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on sportsBIT, Betting Insight today. Time for a big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Round 3, North Carolina Duke, 4 o'clock Pacific ESPN. Early money for the Tar Heels, North Carolina 3.5. 156.5 the total. We got this wrong. We told you both teams had no shot to win this conference tournament. Winners in the championship game. They just played. UNC was laying 7. They won 90-83. First meeting, Duke was 2.5. It was 86-78. Dukies won there. They held their own on the boards. They won 31-29, but lost 34-26 in the rematch. So good job by the Dukies hanging in there. But it's depth against no depth. Will the minutes take a toll on these Duke starters, Teddy?
Well, they certainly didn't in Thursday's actions, but now, as you get into the 3rd and 3, the minutes, in theory, are supposed to add up. Tatum, Kennard, obviously leading the way for the Blue Devils in terms of minutes played through the first 2 games of this ACC tournament, but Jackson, Jones, and Jefferson all have played extended minutes. That being said, Duke showed some semblance of depth in the win over Louisville. It wasn't just Louisville collapsing in front of a zone and missing free throws. It was also Grayson Allen, a guy we talked about was a complete non-factor in basically each of the last 5 games. Well, all of a sudden on Thursday, Grayson Allen comes off the bench, scores 18 points in 28 minutes, gets a nice flop. That was a huge momentum change in the ballgame with the 3 free throws, and Grayson Allen was a difference maker for the Blue Devils in that win. If he plays well, they're live, even with the lack of depth.
They got problems on defense. They have to roll the dice and give away something because of the lack of size and depth. They gave Barry a lot of open shots Saturday night. He had 28 points, 5 for 5 on triples. And minutes, no problem here with North Carolina. An easy time of it in a runaway against Miami.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Justin Jackson went 33. Nobody else played more than 29 for the Tar Heels. So a Roy Williams team will be the fresher of these 2 squads, but the markets are already reacting to that, Pauly. As you mentioned, the early money has come on North Carolina, and when you watch those first 2 meetings between these teams, I'm not convinced North Carolina is the better of these 2 teams. You know, when they were able to dominate the glass, it's one story, but when Duke's future NBA players are playing like future NBA players, like they have in the first couple of games of this tournament, you know, Duke catching points looks interesting to me in a way that it hasn't when they've been laying points, or at least, late points in the opener and then in a near pick'em range in yesterday's game versus Louisville.
Game number 2, live odds, sportsbookreview.com, Iowa State and TCU, 4 o'clock, Pacific ESPN2, Iowa State 4. Sometimes for Cinderella, the slipper only fits for a day. When a team does not have a major sense of winning the tourney and they pull off a huge upset, do they celebrate the upset? Or they get focused for the next game? You know, Jamie Dixon just comes in. He's trying to turn around TCU. That was a huge win for the program. Maybe they're back on the bubble if they win this game today. But they had lost 7 straight against Kansas. And they were ready to go. And in that game, got some confidence. And then the kid gets fouled shooting the 3, and they pulled a big upset.
Sure, but when you look at the TCU, number 1, I mean, TCU put everything in that game against Kansas. Number 2, now it's 3-3. For the Horned Frogs. And number 3, look at the quote. The senior guard, Brandon Parrish, quote, "This is the win of my career right here, to be completely honest. There's a lot of times when we could look at things in the media and people would tell us we were never good enough, we would never be able to get it done. When you got a senior saying, hey, I'm coming off the biggest win of my career, and now you got to roll out the ball 24 hours later, no time, no downtime, no time to enjoy it per se. TCU is kind of the prototype of a team that is supposed to have that Cinderella slipper fit for a day, but not the type of squad that we would expect to make an extended run in this tournament. They didn't come into the tournament thinking they were going to win it. And as you mentioned, they lost 7 straight times entering the tournament here in conference play. They had a real rough run down the stretch. So not a team that expects to be playing for the title. Yeah, okay, they have the confidence. They split with Iowa State in the regular season, but Iowa State, I mean, this team has been special in Kansas City, Pauly.
It's amazing. 3 years ago, they won the tourney with Morris, Thomas, and Long playing 184 minutes as freshmen in the 3 wins. Repeated the following season. Lost to Oklahoma last year in the first round, but covered as dogs. Now they can set history by getting a third title as a trio. 7-1 straight up, 7-0-1 ATS in the tourney. They lost 84-77 at TCU in the first meeting. Came back with some great defensive pressure. to win the rematch 84-71 at home, and they forced 19 turnovers in that one.
Sure, and when Iowa State's forcing turnovers, that team wins by margin. The Cyclones are not a team that has any problems on the offensive end of the court when they're able to get out and transition, thanks to miscues and forcing miscues from their opponents. They can put up some pretty ugly results. As you mentioned, a 13-point win at home in the rematch between these two squads. This is a game we're going to talk about a little more when it comes to play of the day time.
Up next, Michigan State, Minnesota, and Villanova, Seton Hall in the play of the day on SportsBIT. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBIT, betting insight today. Big game breakdown continues. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Michigan State and Minnesota. Early money on Sparty. Michigan State won, 138.5 the total. First two meetings very early in the Big Ten season. Sparty plus 5.5, won by 1 in overtime, and they were laying 3.5 at home, and they won 65-47, destroyed Minnesota in that game. Minnesota couldn't shoot. 39 for 110 in the two losses. Only 6 of 29 from 3, Teddy.
Yeah, and both those games were a long, long time ago. And one thing that I don't like to do at this time of year is focus on what a team did in November and who they knocked off in December. I want to know what's the team doing right now. And Minnesota, to me, is a very different team now than they were. We're talking about, December 27th for the first meeting. That was their Big Ten opener. January 11th for the rematch. That's 2 months ago. Now, the Spartans did win on the road without Miles Bridges. And Bridges, obviously, an impact player for that team. But the key story was, A, the Gophers' inability to shoot in those contests, and B, the fact that Michigan State, certainly in the second meeting between the two, was in a position where they were showing signs of coming alive and coming around, and then they regressed prior to the Big Ten tournament. Certainly looked good yesterday, but Penn State's no Minnesota.
So Minnesota's on an 8-0 straight up run and 7-1 ATS before they lost to Wisconsin on Sunday. And this really has turned the tide in a momentum run here for Minnesota. I wouldn't be that concerned with losing in Madison. Reggie Lynch, 22 blocks last 3 games for the Gophers, only 3 blocks in 2 regular season games combined against Sparty, and he fouled out both times, so that's cause for concern there.
Well, Reggie Lynch, in my mind, if you're going to handicap the game, that's what it comes down to. Lynch, when he is not in foul trouble, he is an impact player on the defense end of the court. You're talking about 22 blocks in the last 3 games. But in both games against Michigan State, they got him in foul trouble, and they may well, I would expect Izzo to put together a game plan to try to get Reggie Lynch out of that ball game. But, Michigan State, it really was like a welcome to land. It was a perfect scenario for Sparty on Thursday. 9 players went at least 16 minutes. Nobody went more than 30 minutes. Nobody scored more than 15 points. They dominated on the glass with a plus 16 margin. That's the Michigan State recipe for winning right now. But you talk about that Gopher run, 8-0 straight up, 7-1 ATS prior to that loss at Wisconsin. I wonder if Minnesota is a team that has kind of achieved as much as they're going to achieve, and the value now comes down in the other direction on the Gophers. Is that a stumble? It might well be a momentum turn. And again, I do expect to see Michigan State money between now and tip-off. We've already seen some of it.
Hard to go against Izzo this time of year. One more. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Big East semifinal number 1, 3:30 Pacific. Fox Sports 1, Villanova and Seton Hall. Nova 11. And we featured these matchups earlier this year, telling you about the unfinished business with the Wildcats after Seton Hall beat them in the Big East tournament final last year. And then when they got their chance, they killed them. They were laying 13.5 and beat them by 30 at home, and they were laying 6.5 and beat them by 22 on the road, Teddy.
Yeah, but the question for tonight, do the Wildcats already feel that they got their revenge, or does it shift back to Madison Square Garden, bring back memories that make them want another kill? Because Villanova, again, an easy ride on Thursday. DiVincenzo and Painter and Paschal all contributing. Those are guys off the bench. No starter went more than 30 minutes in that contest for Villanova. So the Wildcats who are interested in this tournament, interested in winning this tournament, remember the loss from Seton Hall from last year, blew out Seton Hall twice already this season, and they're relatively rested, fresh, and ready for the third meeting of this trifecta, obviously going later today.
Any intimidation here from Seton Hall?
Well, I mean, Seton Hall 6-0 straight up since that second loss to Villanova. They had an impressive win at Butler on Saturday. They knocked off Marquette in their first tournament game here in the Big East. 5 players scored in double digits. But, intimidation factor? No, I don't think so. You look at Kadeem Carrington, Angel Delgado, Desi Rodriguez. These guys all started in last year's Big East title game, a game that Seton Hall won. So, intimidated? No, I don't think so. The question is whether they're good enough, because we can be confident that Villanova, once again, is going to bring something to the table, just like they did yesterday. But one thing we can also be confident of, the Villanova bandwagon, it's growing. It's growing a little bit every day, and we're seeing that with this point spread. Wildcats has double-digit chalk in this one.
One more conference tournament that hasn't started, and shame on the Ivy League. Yes, they even added a conference tournament. Princeton went undefeated in the regular season. They got to win 2 more. It's a 4-team conference tournament. It's at the Palestra. It starts Saturday. Princeton ran away with the league, and they will meet Penn to start, and then Harvard plays Yale. Obviously, the 2 teams meet, and the winner punches their ticket.
Yeah, we got estimated point spread, sportsbit guesstimations. We're looking at Princeton -5/128 against Penn. Harvard -1 with a total of about 139.5 against Yale. And again, the guesstimates are just that. They're guesstimates. They're usually accurate. Though we were wrong on one from yesterday. We were off by about 2 or 3 points on the Utah Cal line, which surprised me. But that's what we're looking at. And of course, Princeton, they won 61-52, -8 at home, and 64-49, -5.5 at Penn. Harvard won 77-64. They were laying 4.5 at home. They won the other game as well, +4 at Yale. They won that contest by 8. So both Princeton and Harvard swept their season series against their respective foes during the regular season. Ivy League, welcome to the 21st century. It only took you 17 years behind after everybody else.
Shame on you, Ivy League. Shame on you and other conferences. What's wrong with you guys? All right, it's been a roller coaster. Lose 8 in a row, win 7 in a row, lose a couple in a row. Let's get back on track. Money time play of the day. You teased it, Teddy. Back to Iowa State TCU.
Sure. Let's use betting number 574. The Iowa State Cyclones -3.5 against TCU. Pardon the expression, but TCU shot their wad yesterday, and the Iowa State seniors know what this time is all about. Their eyes are on the prize. Take Iowa State -3.5. That's our play of the day.
All right, there it is. We're back Monday with the brackets. We'll have betting lines. We'll break down every region, possible upsets, sleepers. Can't wait, Teddy. It's going to be crazy selection Sunday, and when we get back Monday on SportsBIT.
Do not miss a show next week. Whatever you do, take time out of your day to watch SportsBIT. We will give you information that you are not going to find anywhere else, and we're going to do it every day, and we're going to do it for free. Please join us. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell your enemies. Let's get some viewers. SportsBIT. Betting Insight today. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.